Hey there, music lovers. Well, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much, as always, for dropping by. And I thought I'd do a video about an upcoming box set that you may be interested in if you're a fan of Phil Collins. It's called Plays Well With Others. It hit stores on Friday, September the 28th. And it's 59 tracks, 4 CDs, and this is not a greatest hits collection by any means. This is more of a career retrospective in terms of his drumming, really. This is when Phil Collins, got behind the kit in either bands that he was a part of or, doing studio work with various artists, as even the 4th disc is all live. And it's songs that Phil Collins handpicked. Starting from his very first band, Flaming Youth, that he was in the late 60s, right before he joined Genesis, up until like recent times. And this whole collection, I would have called it Drum Phil. I mean, come on, that's a no-brainer, right? But actually, this set was named after a t-shirt that Chester Thompson gave to Phil Collins some time ago. Chester Thompson, of course, is the touring drummer for the band Genesis, and Chester gave Phil a t-shirt for his birthday or something, and it said "Plays Well With Others" on it, and it was basically meant to just kind of thank Phil for the service that he's done in playing with so many artists over all these decades. If he's not a session guy, he's doing, the producer role, doing charity work, going out and performing live, even at like that whole concert at Live Aid, which I did a video about. He was the only guy that was both in London and in Philly. He took the Concorde to be at both events. That's the kind of dude that Phil Collins is. He's a workaholic, and there was a certain phase there in the 70s and in the early part of the 80s where, Phil Collins was like the go-to guy. And so this box set really showcases a lot of great performances that he's done, both in the studio and also live with various artists. And so I picked out 5 songs from this box set that are probably the most popular Phil Collins songs that he played drums on outside of Genesis. These were hits in the 80s and 90s, and maybe you didn't know that Phil Collins played drums on these tunes. I'm going to get to those in just a little bit, but first I wanted to just run through some of the highlights from this box set. I mean, there's like almost 60 songs here. And there's some of the stuff is real obscure and stuff I'd never heard of before, but some of these really jumped out at me, and some of these songs I went and listened to, and they're really, really cool. Like this song from Peter Banks. Now, Peter Banks is the original guitar player from Yes. He actually passed away not too long ago, sadly, but there's a song on here called Night's Reprise, which not only features Phil Collins on drums, but also John Wetton on bass. So that's a really cool song. I got a playlist actually going below. Go click on the link. I've got a bunch of these songs loaded up for you to check out. After that, there's Brand X. Song from those guys. Brand X is a band that Phil Collins joined in the mid-70s. It's just kind of like a place to go blow off some steam when he wasn't doing Genesis stuff. They were like a jazz fusion band. There's a tune here called Nuclear Burn, which is really, really cool and jazzy. Then he does a song with Robert Fripp. Of course, Robert Fripp in King Crimson, although at this particular time, Crimson in the late 70s had broken up, and Fripp was doing a solo album called Exposure. And the track on this box set is called North Star, which is a song that wound up becoming a King Crimson song. This was like an early version of it that featured Daryl Hall of Hall & Oates on vocals. You had Tony Levin on bass and Phil Collins on drums. This song would wind up becoming a song called Mate Kudasai, which was on the Discipline album, which was the first album that Crimson put out in the 80s with the new lineup with, Adrian Belew and everything. And, in some alternate universe, Daryl Hall was the vocalist for Crimson in the 80s because Robert Fripp was working with Daryl Hall. He even wrote and produced Daryl Hall's, not the whole album, didn't write the whole album, but he co-wrote some stuff with Daryl Hall and produced his first solo album called Sacred Songs. The album never went anywhere, but you could tell that Robert Fripp wanted to work with Daryl, but it just never really worked out. Robert Fripp, of course, he had produced like David Bowie, the whole, the song Heroes, that was Robert Fripp all over that. And of course, he produced Peter Gabriel, which is the next song I'm going to talk about here, Intruder. This song is real important for Phil Collins, and I did a whole video about it. I'll put a link up to it. This is the song where Phil Collins got his drum sound in the 80s. This is the sound that he would use on In the Air Tonight. I mean, that's what made that song really, gave it the impact that it had. And this was the sound that Genesis used on a song like Mama. Pretty much any of the Genesis songs. This is the drum sound that Phil Collins used going forward, not just with his own stuff and with Genesis, but with other artists too. And so I think that Intruder by Peter Gabriel was probably one of the most important songs that Phil Collins ever did in his solo work. And so that's here. That's really, really cool. Also, there's a song from Robert Plant. There's actually a couple of songs from Robert Plant here. One of them is called Pledge Pin, which is a great song from the Pictures at 11 album. And that was an album that Phil Collins played drums on for the most part. He played drums on the first couple of Plant solo albums. Robert Plant brought him in not just to play drums, but to kind of use his expertise because, Robert Plant was coming off of Led Zeppelin. He had never run a band before, and so Phil Collins came in and kind of ran the ship, kept everybody in line. I did a whole video not a whole video, but I did a video about Robert Plant where I talk about this, and I'll put a link up to it. There's also a song here by Philip Bailey, who was in Earth, Wind & Fire, and he did a solo album called Chinese Wall. That was his third solo album. Phil Collins produced it. And he also worked with Philip Bailey on a song called Easy Lover, which you may remember. That was a big hit. Now, that's not on this box set, but Walking on the Chinese Wall is. And that's a pretty cool song. There's also a tune by Paul McCartney called Angry here, which is, I believe it was from the Press to Play album. Real obscure Paul McCartney song. Then also there's Eric Clapton, a song called Behind the Sun, which is a great song from Clapton. Not only does Phil Collins have some really good drum work on it, but there's a really nice guitar solo from Eric Clapton there too. And of course, there is a Genesis song on this collection, and it's No Son of Mine. Of course, it's not the greatest drum performance from Phil Collins. I'm sure he could have picked something from the much earlier days, but then again, if he went with something like Cinema Show, it would have probably eaten up a lot of time on this collection. So probably No Son of Mine was about as good a choice as he probably could have come up with. And as I mentioned earlier, there's 5 songs that I picked out of this that were really popular hits, from the 80s and 90s that Phil Collins played on, that are on this box set, that you might not have known that he played drums on them. Number 1 is Robert Plant's In the Mood. Remember that song? That was a hit for Robert from his second solo album. Phil Collins played most of the drums on that second album. Also, number 2, Do They Know It's Christmas? Remember that charity song from the 80s? Came out around the time of We Are the World. Phil Collins played drums on that song. Number 3 is going to be Frida. And I Know There's Something Going On. I always loved that song. Frida used to be in the band ABBA. And, she was going to do this solo album. Wanted to have more of a mainstream appeal to it. She had gone through a divorce, just like Phil had. And she was a big fan of like In the Air Tonight and his first solo album. So it was kind of like a natural fit. And Phil Collins brought in like Daryl Sturmer, who played guitar with him on his solo stuff and also plays guitar with Genesis Live. And, Phil Collins just shines on this song. I mean, if you want to know about the drum sound of Intruder that I was talking about earlier, listen to Intruder and then listen to I Know There's Something Going On. The drum sound is like, you can tell that what he learned from the Intruder session helped him to execute this song. I mean, this is such a great, powerful song. Just love it. And then the 4th one is going to be Howard Jones and No One Is to Blame. It was a big hit for Howard Jones back in the 80s. Phil Collins does some backing vocals and lays down some really nice drums on it too. And the 5th song is going to be from Tears for Fears, from their Sowing the Seeds of Love album, and Woman in Chains. And this song, you wouldn't know that it was Phil necessarily from listening to it. Lots of nice percussion work, nice textures going on here with the drums. Of course, this song also features great vocal from Alita Adams. She's really good on this song, and I got to give it to Roland Orzabal. He probably hands in some of the best vocals he's ever done on this song. It's a very, very strong hit from Tears for Fears. And so there you go. There are 5 great songs from this collection in addition to all the stuff that I've just talked to you about. You know, Phil Collins' Plays Well With Others comes out Friday. And like I said, I got a playlist down below with a bunch of these songs in there for you to check out if you'd like. Let me know what you think. What do you think of these songs? You know, what Genesis song would you have included in this box set, all right? Be sure to comment below, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button and, you know, go see Phil if you want to. He's going to be hitting the road, I believe, next week. He kicks off his U.S. tour in Florida, so check for dates on that. And I'm sure I'll have a set list review once he gets going. And I'll be back soon with another video.